Dundee, the city of discovery, a name that evokes its maritime heart, its audacious history of whaling ships, jute production, and scientific innovation. It sits proudly on the northern bank of the Firth of Tay, where the wide silver expanse of the River Tay finally yields its fresh water to the vast churning darkness of the North Sea. This is a city defined by contrast. The modern, glass-fronted V&A Dundee, a beacon of contemporary architecture, stands directly beside the stoic, rugged masts of the RRS Discovery, Captain Scott's Antarctic ship. The old red sandstone terraces of the West End climb toward two esteemed universities, while the steel skeleton of the Tay rail bridge cuts a low, magnificent line across the water, carrying the rhythm of daily life. Dundee felt safe. It possessed the fierce, protective spirit of a tight-knit Scottish community, large enough to be vibrant, yet small enough to feel accountable. On this particular Thursday afternoon in late September, the air along the newly developed waterfront promenade was crisp, smelling faintly of salt and rain. The sun, a rare and precious sight, was low, casting long, golden shadows across Slessor Gardens, a sweeping green space that was the pride of the renewed city centre. Sarah Hamilton knew this stretch of pavement by heart. It was her daily pilgrimage. With her was Anya, her 3-year-old daughter. Anya was a whirlwind of copper curls and unstoppable energy, dressed in a bright yellow rain slicker. Despite the clear skies, a necessary precaution in Scotland, she was chasing a scattering of gulls, her giggles echoing off the hard, geometric lines of the modern buildings. Sarah sat on a low, polished granite bench, scrolling through a text message, her attention fractionally diverted. Anya was 10 feet away, total. She was safely contained by the wide, pedestrianized area and the low wall separating the path from the road. 10 feet. A distance that felt negligible, protected by the thousands of miles of ocean behind the city and the concrete barrier beside it. And then, the world fractured. It wasn't a loud event. There was no screech of tires, no shouted demand. It was a terrifying, absolute silence. A shadow detached itself from the pedestrian tunnel beneath the V&A, moving with a chilling, predatory efficiency. The figure was tall, entirely unremarkable, in a dark, oversized jacket and a cap pulled low. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. The figure closed the 10-foot gap in 2 silent strides, scooped the child off her feet as if she weighed nothing, and was already turning, disappearing back towards the network of maintenance roads and old dock infrastructure behind the main cultural center. It took Sarah 3 full seconds to register the impossible reality. The yellow slicker was gone. Anya's giggles were replaced by a short, stifled, panicked cry, a sound instantly cut short as if a hand had covered it. The sound that left Sarah's mouth next was not a scream. It was a raw, animalistic howl of violation, of instant, agonizing loss. It tore through the quiet urban afternoon, echoing louder than any siren and stopping every single person within earshot. It was a sound that would define the next 48 hours in Dundee, the sound of a mother's universe imploding. Within 5 minutes, the waterfront was swarming. The initial civilian response was chaotic but immediate. Several people tackled the phone calls, others sprinted toward the tunnels, and a handful rushed to comfort the now hysterical Sarah. The scale of the crime, the brazen, silent snatching of a child in the heart of a busy city, demanded an unprecedented response from Police Scotland's Tayside Division. Within minutes, the incident was designated a Category A missing persons case, rapidly escalating to an attempted abduction. The case landed on the desk of Detective Inspector Alasdair McLean. McLean was a man forged in the industrial grime of old Glasgow, but tempered by 2 decades of serving the quieter communities of the East Coast. He had seen tragedy, but never anything this cold, this calculated. "Lock the city down now," McLean barked into the phone, his voice rough granite. "Every camera feed, every bridge, every ferry. I want eyes on every vehicle that passed Slessor Gardens in the 15 minutes before and after the reported time. Tay Road Bridge toll cameras, pull the plates. The rail bridge is trickier, but check the trains for anyone matching a description. We assume they're trying to cross the Tay or hit the A90. The irony was crushing. Dundee was known for its manageable size. In an instant, that manageability became a liability. A short drive could put the abductor on the road south to Edinburgh or west to Perth, blending into Scotland's Central Belt transport network. The description was frustratingly vague. Male, tall, dark clothing, maybe a grey cap. That described half the population walking past on a cold afternoon. The only certainty was the yellow rain slicker, which now seemed like a beacon of hope and a heartbreaking target. McLean arrived at the scene. The low sun made shadows treacherous. He stood with Sarah's husband, Robert, a man who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Robert," McLean said softly, his eyes scanning the area for any discarded detail. "Did Anya have anything distinct? A toy, a blanket, anything the abductor might have been struggling with?" Robert, trembling, could only shake his head. "No, just the jacket. She had a new shoe, a bright blue trainer, bright blue. They were brand new." McLean latched onto the detail. New shoes, something the abductor might not have accounted for, something bright and small. He immediately radioed the description. "Focus on the feet, bright blue children's trainers, size 7, could be tucked or hidden, but look low." The shock was already radiating through Dundee. Social media channels, usually reserved for community gossip and local news, erupted. The missing child's name, Anya Hamilton, became the single most trending topic in Scotland. Parents rushed to collect their children from nurseries. University students paused their study sessions, scrolling through the frantic pleas for information. The city's sense of invincibility was annihilated, replaced by a cold, unifying fear. The initial hours yielded nothing but dead ends. Surveillance footage showed the dark figure entering the tunnel, but the angle obscured the face and any clear gate. The figure emerged on the far side, near the old railway sheds, disappearing into the maze of industrial buildings adjacent to the docks, the true heart of Dundee's gritty, working waterfront, a place of rusting cranes and empty warehouses. McLean established a forward command post in an empty office near Discovery Point. The room hummed with the energy of desperation. Analysts pored over transport data. Uniformed officers conducted door-to-door inquiries in the nearby residential areas of Broughty Ferry and the city centre. It was 9 hours into the investigation, just after midnight, that the first true thread appeared. It wasn't from a multi-million-pound surveillance system. It was from a 70-year-old retired shipbuilder named Malcolm Fraser. Malcolm lived in a sheltered housing complex 2 blocks from the old docks. He had seen the appeals on the local news. Around the time of the incident, he had been looking out his window, a habit of a lifetime, keeping an eye on the Tay. He called the police hotline. His voice was slow, deliberate, and calm. "I saw something, Inspector," Malcolm told McLean, who took the call personally. "Not the man, not the bairn, but the van." Malcolm described an older, white transit van, the kind tradesmen used. It was parked conspicuously near a loading bay, not near any active business, but Malcolm's attention to detail, honed by years of precision engineering, was the strong attention-grabbing element the police needed. "The van," Malcolm explained. "It had a distinct scratch, not a normal scratch. It looked like someone had tried to gouge a number into the paint on the rear passenger door, near the handle. It was faint, but I noticed it because of the way the street lamp caught it, a fresh, deliberate cut. And the back door, it was propped open a fraction, just enough to catch the light." McLean's adrenaline spiked. This was concrete. This was visual proof, beyond a generic description. "Did you see a plate, Malcolm?" "No, son. Too dark, too far. But the gouge, you won't miss it." The team immediately shifted focus. They filtered the tens of thousands of vehicles captured by the bridge and city cameras, down to only white older vans, matching the general type. Then, they began sending officers to visually check every registered van in the Tayside area that matched the criteria, prioritizing those seen moving near the waterfront around the time of the abduction. This was painstaking, exhausting work, but it was grounded. The community, galvanized by the hope of the sighting, rallied around the police effort. Local businesses offered free coffee and food to the searchers. Dundee, shaken to its core, was fighting back with a unifying determination. It was Detective Constable Eva Sharma, a young officer with an obsessive eye for detail, who found the van. She was reviewing footage from a warehouse loading dock camera 5 miles west of the waterfront, near the A90 interchange. The camera had captured an old white Ford Transit turning into a barely used industrial estate off the Kingsway an hour after the abduction. The plate was partially obscured by grime, but the distinctive deep, angular scratch near the rear door handle caught her attention, a silver line flashing in the dock light. McLean deployed a surveillance team instantly. They moved with silent, practiced precision into the Kingsway industrial estate. It was a desolate area, full of shuttered factories and storage units. The van was parked outside a unit labeled Storage Solutions Unit 47. The air was heavy with industrial dampness and the faint metallic scent of the North Sea, carried on the breeze from the Tay. They observed the unit for an agonizing hour. No movement, no light. McLean knew he couldn't wait for a warrant. The risk to Anya was too high. He gave the order. Breach and clear. Silent entry. If the suspect moves, drop him. The child's safety is absolute priority. A 3-person team of armed response officers moved to the unit door. Using a specialized tool, they silently forced the heavy, corrugated metal door just enough for a narrow entry. The unit was cold, dark, and filled with old plastic sheeting and stacked wooden pallets. A single dusty oil lamp burned low in the corner, casting enormous, flickering shadows. And there, sitting quietly on a pile of blankets, wearing her bright yellow slicker, holding a small, crumpled piece of plastic, was Anya Hamilton. She was safe. The abductor, a disgruntled former dock worker named Alan, was found moments later, huddled behind a stack of crates, seemingly frozen by the sudden burst of light and sound. He offered no resistance, collapsing onto the concrete floor in shock. Anya was immediately swept up by D.C. Sharma, who held the child tightly until McLean himself could reach them. The scene that followed was pure, overwhelming relief. Paramedics checked Anya over. She was cold, but physically unharmed, remarkably quiet, and perhaps in shock, but fundamentally safe. McLean's primary concern was the reunification. He drove Anya directly to the police station, where Sarah and Robert were waiting in an adjacent room. The sight of the yellow slicker, the copper curls, and the bright blue trainers walking toward them, even in the arms of a police officer, was too much. The sound of Sarah and Robert's sobs of relief was profoundly different from Sarah's initial howl of panic. It was the sound of a universe snapping back together. The following morning, the sun rose over the Firth of Tay, turning the North Sea silver again. The news spread through Dundee like a wave of physical warmth. Anya Hamilton was home. The suspect was in custody, charged with attempted abduction. The city, which had felt so fragile only hours before, now felt immensely strong. The attempted abduction had not shattered Dundee. It had forced the community to close ranks. McLean, exhausted but satisfied, stood overlooking the Tay. The Tay Rail Bridge and the Tay Road Bridge stood as concrete testaments to connectivity and, today, to containment. The city's swift, unified response, from the panicked mother's accurate description to the careful, observant eyes of Malcolm Fraser, the retired shipbuilder, to the tireless work of D.C. Sharma, proved that security wasn't just about cameras and cars, but about community and attention. Dundee had weathered the storm. The waterfront incident, as it would be known, became a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the brightest, safest corners. But more importantly, it became a story of resilience, of a mother's primal scream answered by the collective heartbeat of a Scottish city that refused to lose one of its own. Anya, the little girl in the bright yellow slicker, was safely back on the waterfront within a week, this time clinging tightly to her mother's hand, chasing the gulls, and the people of Dundee, the city of discovery, looked a little closer at their neighbours, their children and the shadows, forever bound by the knowledge that sometimes the sharpest defence is simply paying attention. The city was wounded, but in its healing it discovered a profound, new strength. And that, in the end, was the final, most enduring truth of the Tay.